Well, it was a good weekend for the Irish football program as the Irish landed a top target in their class of 2025. But it was an even better weekend for the men's lacrosse team as they won their second straight national championship on Sunday. All that and more coming up in today's edition of Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into another edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. And today is Tuesday, May 28th. I hope you enjoyed a great Memorial Day weekend, and I appreciate you starting your day right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. And this show is free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are watching along on YouTube, please like the video below and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're on the go and you're listening to the podcast, please take a moment to rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Okay, we have a lot to get into today. The Notre Dame men's lacrosse team capped off one of the most dominant seasons in school history by any athletic program. It was a joy to watch, especially down the stretch here as they dominated Denver in the semifinals and then just blew out Maryland in the national championship. So that was a whole lot of fun to watch, but we're going to save that for segment 3 because I want to focus today's show on Mark Zackery. Mark Zackery is a 4-star cornerback out of Indianapolis, and Notre Dame was able to secure that commitment in their class of 2025, and I'll admit, it was a pretty poorly kept secret that Mark Zackery was going to go to Notre Dame. I think I started talking about him in the defensive back class as a whole a few weeks ago, even before I went on vacation at the start of May. Well, now it's official because Mark Zackery officially announced his commitment to the Irish on May 25th, and this is an absolutely huge get for Mike Mickens, the Notre Dame quarterback room, the defensive back, the class of 2025 as a whole, and a whole lot more. So I want to break down Mark Zackery, what he brings to the table for Notre Dame, and then I'll get into what it means for the class as a whole, and then we'll finish the show off with some thoughts on the Notre Dame men's lacrosse team. But let's start with Mark Zackery. He is a top-ranked player on pretty much every recruiting site. He comes out to the number 135 player nationally, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 15th-ranked cornerback and the number 2 player in the state of Indiana. And as I say quite frequently on this show, whenever there's a top prospect coming out of Indiana, Notre Dame absolutely has to land him because Indiana is not necessarily a hotbed for high school football talent. So when the opportunity presents itself, Notre Dame has to capitalize. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that with Damian Shanklin, the edge rusher, but they were able to land a commitment from Mark Zackery, and that is a big, big deal. 24/7, just their own recruiting sites, they have Zackery ranked as high as 59th in the country and the 6th-ranked cornerback in the entire class. Zackery is 5'10.5", and he's 165 pounds, but he's got really long arms, like especially long arms for someone who is only 5'10.5", and that's a big reason why Mike Mickens in Notre Dame wanted him so badly, because he makes up for that lack of height with just an incredible wingspan. Zackery goes to Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis, and even though Indiana as a whole isn't producing a ton of great high school football talent every single year, Indianapolis has some good schools. They've got Ben Davis, Warren Central, and they've got some good football there, and Mark Zackery's been playing against quality competition throughout his high school career on the football field and on the basketball court. He is a stud basketball player. I saw some people joking that Zackery was the best basketball commit in this class, which I don't think is true at all, but it does seem like Mark Zackery is going to have a chance to play for Micah Shrewsbury's squad. I don't really know how that's going to work logistically, considering the seasons overlap, but it looks like he's going to give it a shot, and that would be a big addition for both squads. But for today's purpose, we were certainly going to focus on Mark Zackery, the football player, and not the basketball player. Zackery's finalists came down to Cincinnati, Florida, Michigan, and Notre Dame. So it's always a good win when you get one over Michigan. I thought Cincinnati and Florida were sort of odd schools to be in the mix there as well. But Georgia and Ohio State were recruiting him pretty hard at one point in time. So Notre Dame really had to fight to get this commitment, even though he's from not that far away from South Bend. So that was a big-time get. And I feel like when you look at Zackery and his athletic profile, the term elite athlete is probably overused. I'm admittedly probably guilty of that myself. But when you watch Zackery play football or basketball, it is clear that he is an elite athlete. He's one of the best basketball players in the state, and he can throw down for someone who's only 5'10". Like, I'm 5'9". The thought of me being able to not only dunk, but throw down that tomahawk and windmill dunks is just, it's not even possible for me to fathom, right? Like, I'm just excited when I get net. Meanwhile, Zachary can just bounce out of the gym, and you can see his basketball skills on the football field. There's a lot of translatable things there, especially for a quarterback. So some of the things that jump out to me are Zachary's ability to play the ball when it's up in the air. Like, he can get up there, make a play on the ball, and he just has great instincts, which is something that's hard to teach, let's be honest, right? Like, you could be a great athlete, but when the ball is in the air, are you able to make a play on the ball, or are you just jumping high for the sake of jumping high? Well, Zachary is able to jump in the air high and make a play on the ball. He has great footwork, he's very fluid, and he's very explosive. He can really accelerate off one cut, and that's extremely exciting when you see a cornerback who's able to break down. Even if the receiver has a step on him, Zachary is able to make up that ground and make a play on the ball. Now, I will say that Zachary is pretty thin. I always joke that whatever he's listed at on the recruiting sites, not specific to Zachary, but any high school prospect, you can basically shave off 1 inch off the height and probably 10 pounds from the weight. So if Zachary is listed at 165 pounds, he's probably closer to 155. Now, it's getting a little bit better with how many camps and stuff that provide official heights and weights, but still, things slip through the cracks all the time. So I think for Zachary, one thing he absolutely has to do, maybe not before he gets on campus in Notre Dame, but once he arrives, he's got to bulk up and he's got to get much stronger before he's ready to be in every down corner. I think in order for any Notre Dame cornerback to get on the field with Mike Mickens as the cornerbacks coach and now the secondaries coach, they've got to be really physical. I mean, you look at what Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart did last year. Both of those guys are were two of the most physical cornerbacks in all of college football. And there are times when they'll show replays of Hart or Morrison in press coverage, and their hands are all over the wide receiver, and it really frustrates the wide receivers who they're guarding. But hey, that's what Mike Mickens wants, and it has paid off so far. But in order to be that physical type of corner, you're going to have to be strong. You're going to have a strong chest, strong arms, and be willing to get up there and get in the mix with wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. Now, in the case of Zachary, he doesn't really play a whole lot of press coverage in high school, and that's pretty normal, right? Like, if you're an athlete who is as good as Mark Zackery, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to be right up there on the line of scrimmage when you could probably play a couple yards off the ball, give yourself some space, knowing that he's a good enough athlete that he's going to make up that ground on pretty much any wide receiver who steps in front of him. So that is something that he's going to have to sort of build on. He's going to have to become a better press corner by the time he gets to college, and he's going to learn those skills under Mike Mickens as well. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, they aren't in a position where they're going to need Zachary to get on the field right away. As a matter of fact, he's probably going to have some time to develop, because even if Benjamin Morrison leaves after this season, which we all assume he's going to, so long as he's able to stay healthy this year, Notre Dame should have 2 veterans at corner next year in Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey. Plus, they've got Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore from the class of 2024, who have yet to arrive on campus, but will be here in the coming weeks. And then they've got Mark Zackery, Dallas Golden, and Cree Thomas from the class of 2025. So there's a bunch of talent in that room. I feel like Dallas Golden is probably going to be ready to contribute in some capacity from day one. I just think he's that physically gifted and that physically developed, so that once he gets to Notre Dame, I don't think he's going to be a starter or anything like that, because Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey are going to have some things to say about that. But I could definitely see Golden being a key figure on special teams and things like that. Maybe Mark Zackery is able to develop enough over the course of the next year before he gets to Notre Dame. I just don't really see that coming. But it's a good thing when you have a top cornerback prospect like Zackery, and you've got time to develop him so that when he does start to make an impact on the field, he's going to be ready to go. And he has all of these traits that are already really exciting. He just has to put everything together before he's really getting a lot of playing time at the collegiate level. So what does it mean for the defensive back class as a whole? I think when you look at this group, they're going to be a strength in this class. I think they're the biggest strength in the class of 2025 in terms of top to bottom. I mean, Deuce Knight is going to be the star, but the 5 defensive backs that Notre Dame has committed right now in the class of 2025 are incredible. They've got Ivan Taylor at safety. They've got Dallas Golden, who I already mentioned, Mark Zackery, Cree Thomas, and Ethan Long. So that's very, very good. And when you look at this Notre Dame team in 2024, I said last week that I believe that the cornerbacks are one of the best position groups on the entire team. Safety, not that far behind with Xavier Watts, but Watts is going to leave. So they've had to make up some ground in the recruiting department, and I think they've really started to do that, especially in this class. So not only is defensive back a strength for this year's current roster, I think they're going to continue to be a strength down the road. Mike Mickens was the lead recruiter here. He's been the lead recruiter on a lot of these guys, and as long as he's at Notre Dame, the Irish are going to have a really good secondary. Mickens has a great eye for talent, and he has shown the ability to get these commitments over the line when it comes down to it. Even with a guy like Benjamin Morrison, who was listed outside the top 300 on all the recruiting sites, Mickens wanted him really, really badly, and boy, did he have to fight to get him, but he did get him, and we all see how that has paid off for Notre Dame. So I do think it's fair to wonder if Mike Mickens is going to be on the staff next year, because he is going to be an extremely hot commodity in the coaching carousel after the season. Marcus Freeman has already said that, hey, Mike Mickens is probably ready to be a defensive coordinator, and there's going to be a lot of other teams who agree with him because of what he's able to do. But I do think that Notre Dame is going to figure out a way to keep him around. Maybe they make him co-DC with Al Golden and continue to build on the defensive side of the ball, and they are so good. They were so good last year. They're going to be so good this season, and they just continue to recruit at a level that, frankly, I did not think was possible, because I never thought that Notre Dame's cornerback room and safeties would be the strength in the way that they are now, and they're going to continue to be that way because of the recruiting efforts of Mike Mickens, Chris O'Leary when he was at Notre Dame, and also the head ball coach, Marcus Freeman, as well. So this was a great commitment for Notre Dame. A few years ago, landing Mark Zackery probably would have been the biggest get in the class to get a top 100 ranked cornerback, and now it's the expectation. Notre Dame had to get him, given his Indiana roots. Now it's the expectation to land guys like this, and they're continuing to do it year after year after year, and it is really impressive. So kudos to the coaching staff for getting this commitment. All right, is Zachary's commitment enough to elevate the class of 2025 into elite status, though? That's coming up right after this. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Okay, here's my pick, and I'll admit, I've struggled a little bit on the last two picks I've given out on the show, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to keep shooting, and I think the Minnesota T-Wolves are going to cover the 2-point spread. Right now, they're underdogs to the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks have a chance to clinch the Western Conference Finals in Game 4, but you know what? I think the T-Wolves are desperate. They're going to fight a little bit harder, and they're going to squeak one out over the Mavs, and they're going to force a Game 5. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With Mark Zackery in the fold, Notre Dame still has the top-ranked class in 2025, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, and I do believe that number will go down. If you look at the average ranking per commit, Notre Dame is 15th, but I actually believe that number is going to go up because there's a lot of other schools who have a really high average commit ranking, but they only have like 7 guys. Look at Oregon, for example. I believe they're second, but they only have 7 total commits in the class. So I think eventually everything is going to level out to some degree, and I think Notre Dame is going to finish with a class not necessarily in the top 5, but probably just outside that in the 6 through 10 range. And that is still really, really good. But is the class elite? Is there a chance for them to finish with an elite class? Zackery is the 22nd commitment overall and the 5th-ranked player in the class on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He's behind Deuce Knight, who's number 1, safety Ivan Taylor, cornerback Dallas Golden, and defensive end Chris Burgess Jr. If you look at that top 5, you'll notice that 3 players are in the top 100, Knight, Taylor, and Golden, and then 2 players are just outside the top 100 in Chris Burgess Jr. and Mark Zackery. That's pretty good company. But 4 of the top 5 players are on defense, and 3 of those are defensive backs. That's why I said earlier that defensive backs are clearly going to be the strength of this class no matter what happens the rest of the way. And Notre Dame is not done at recruiting defensive backs. They're still in the running for 4-star safety Jayden Blair. I would say that Blair is a want, not necessarily a need, but he's 6'4". He's a top 150 player in the country, and considering how poorly Notre Dame has recruited safety over the past, 6+ years, Blair would certainly be a nice addition. But even if they're not able to land Blair, that's a really, really strong group of 5 players with Taylor, Golden, Zackery, cornerback Cree Thomas, and safety Ethan Long. So now that we look at this class as a whole, I think they're pretty set on some positions, right? Like quarterback, we know they're done. Deuce Knight is going to be the biggest star in this class. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this. Deuce Knight was actually with several current members of the Notre Dame football team this past weekend in Alabama. They were thrown together around Riley Leonard's hometown in Alabama. Riley Leonard was there, obviously. C.J. Carr was there. Wide receivers, Jaden Greathouse, Jane Thomas, Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, Deion Colsey, and Jaden Harrison were all there as well. So it's really great to see Riley Leonard developing some chemistry with the receivers that he's going to be throwing to this season. It's also great for CJ Carr to be in there and continue to learn from those guys. And then you got Deuce Knight in there too, which really surprised me because you don't see that often, a high school recruit working with the current team. But Deuce Knight is so bought into Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, and everything that they've got building over there. So I thought that was really cool. And I just wanted to mention that as we talk about Deuce Knight as the leader in this class. So I feel like they're set at quarterback. They're pretty much done at running back. They have 2 commits right now. I could see them maybe getting in the mix for a top-ranked guy later on, but we'll see. If those are the only 2 running backs that Notre Dame has in this class, they're going to be feeling pretty good about that. They're good at tight end. Offensive line, maybe they'll add one more. Right now, they only have 3 guys, which compared to recent classes is a little bit less than normal. They've been taking like as many as 5 guys in pretty much every single class for the past 3 years, so it's not that surprising that they're only taking 3 here. And now they're done at quarterback with Zackery, Golden, and Thomas. Now let's look at the rest of the positions and what they could do to become a truly elite class. As I mentioned, safety, I think they're pretty much done with Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long, but they could add Jaden Blair. That'd be a huge addition if they're able to do that. They'd have 6 defensive backs, 3 safeties, and a really, really, really good group overall. Wide receiver, they've got a lot of work to do, even though they have 3 commits on board. All of them are 3-star prospects right now, so I think they absolutely need 5-star wide receiver Derek Meadows out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas to commit to Notre Dame. And if they want to be an elite class, that might be the most important commitment left. Now, it does seem like Notre Dame is still in great position there. It depends on who you talk to. Like I had Locked On's recruiting insider Brian Smith on a couple weeks ago, and he said that he wasn't sure if Notre Dame was still in the lead. But then Tom Loy from 24/7 Sports firmly believes that Notre Dame is still in the lead. So this is just one of those commitments that is probably going to come down to the wire, and that's usually how it goes when you're recruiting 5-star prospects who every school in the country wants. Meadows is scheduled for an official visit at Notre Dame in June, so that is obviously going to be something very important to follow over the course of these next few weeks. Also at wide receiver, Tanook Hines would be a nice addition as well. That guy is an absolute burner. He's not currently ranked in the top 300, but I could definitely see him becoming a guy who rises up the recruiting rankings during his senior season. So they would have 5 wide receiver prospects. It is a lot, but I think that there you just got to over-recruit guys, and there's a couple guys on the bottom of that wide receiver list that I certainly think Notre Dame could do a little bit better than. Then we go over to the defensive side of the ball. They still need 2 defensive linemen. We talked about this a lot last week with Brian Smith. They need 1 more edge rusher, and they need 1 more defensive tackle. It is interesting that Notre Dame is going to have to work from behind here because right now there aren't any obvious candidates that Notre Dame is going after on the defensive line. And we talk a lot about how Notre Dame, a big part of their strategy is recruiting guys early and often and getting them to commit very early on in the process. Now Notre Dame is going to have to work behind and probably get involved with some guys who probably already have favorites. They have official visits scheduled. Maybe they're thinking about committing in the summer, and now Notre Dame is going to hope that they wait until the fall to commit. That's what happens when you swing and miss on several guys in the defensive line, as Notre Dame has done in this class. But still, they can work it out if they're able to land, maybe 1 more 4-star in the defensive line. I think that group, it'll at least calm some concerns from some members of the fan base. Now there's linebacker, and linebacker is really interesting because Notre Dame is in the mix for 3 absolute studs at the position, including Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, the younger brother of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. There's also Madden Framo and Noah McHale. I think that they would take one of any of them if they can get them, but I think that they have the best shot with Owusu-Boateng and Framo. Both those guys are going to be on campus in June, and it sounds like Notre Dame is a real shot at Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. And I'll admit, I didn't really give him much of a shot a few months ago, but now he's got that official visit scheduled, and it looks like he's prioritizing schools in the Midwest with one noticeable exclusion to that rule. He's going to visit Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, and USC this summer. So those are 3 schools in the Midwest, and then Notre Dame's arch rival on the West Coast. So not only would it be a blow for Notre Dame just to miss out on a player as talented as he is, it would be especially brutal if he goes to any of those 3 other schools that he's taken official visit to. Although he has been pretty open about the fact that he's going to take his recruitment all the way to the very end, probably going to make a commitment after his senior season. He mentioned Georgia and Florida as 2 schools who are in the mix. Not really that surprising considering Wu goes to IMG Academy in Florida. There's going to be a lot of SEC schools after him. He is a really, really special prospect. He looks like as physically gifted as his brother does right now, and he's still in high school. So the sky's the limit for what he could do once he gets to the college level. And if Notre Dame is able to land him, I mean, you saw how good his brother was. I'm not saying he's going to be as good, but if he's anywhere close to that, that would be an absolutely massive addition to the Notre Dame defense. So when you look at the class as a whole, I think if they're able to land Derek Meadows, if they're able to land Owusu Boateng, Jane Blair, and that hypothetical 4-star defensive lineman that I mentioned earlier, I really think this is going to be an elite class. I know that there's a lot of 3-star prospects. There's 10 right now on the 24/7 Sports Composite. Some guys are going to rise. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those 4 stars fell to a 3-star just because that's the way things work in recruiting, especially before the senior season. Some guys are going to move up. Some guys are going to move down. It's not necessarily an indictment on Notre Dame. There's not some crazy conspiracy going out, or there's not some crazy conspiracy against Notre Dame from the recruiting sites. That's just the way things are. But I think if Notre Dame falls short of that, then it'd just be a really good class. And when you have to settle for really good, you know, there are plenty of worse places to be. I really do think that Notre Dame already has enough talent. They're going to finish in the top 6 through 10. If they're able to land these elite prospects, that's really going to set them over the edge. And we're going to be talking about this class of 2025 as one of the best classes Notre Dame has had in a really long time. All right, coming up next, the Notre Dame men's lacrosse team capped off their pursuit to back-to-back national championships on Monday. So where do they rank among the best teams in school history? Notre Dame men's lacrosse team played a national championship on Monday afternoon, and the most adversity that they faced throughout the day was really what time is the game going to start, because Notre Dame was playing this one in Philadelphia, and they were dealing with all kinds of weather issues. There's been a bunch of storms hitting the Northeast and the Midwest lately. Philadelphia got a bit of that. So after the game time got moved forward and then moved backward throughout the day, they finally got the game going, and Notre Dame actually went down 2-0 to start the game. But after that, it was all Irish the rest of the way. They proceeded to outscore the Terps 15-3 the rest of the game on their way to their second title in as many years. And the Irish became the first program to win back-to-back championships in consecutive seasons since Duke repeated in 2014. Virginia actually won back-to-back championships, but they won one in 2019 and then the next one in 2021 because there was not a men's lacrosse championship during the COVID year in 2020. But still, this is a huge accomplishment for the men's lacrosse team. They were the best team all season long, and they were able to cap that off with a dominant performance in the national championship. It actually got to the point in the game where it looked like the players were just kind of messing around out there. I'm not saying they weren't taking it seriously, because they definitely were, but like Chris Kavanaugh was trying trick shots, and he made one, by the way, this unbelievable turnaround that really was just like, okay, this game is over. They're just out here having fun, doing trick shots and stuff and making highlight reels. Chris Kavanaugh finished the game with 5 goals. His brother, Pat Kavanaugh, had 6 assists. Those two guys and what they have done for the Notre Dame men's lacrosse team is just incredible. Dan Orlovsky, the analyst at ESPN, said they're one of the most exciting duos in all of sports right now. I don't think that they're going to make First Take tomorrow morning, but I do think that they are getting a lot of well-deserved recognition for what they've done, not only this season, but their entire careers at Notre Dame. Also, their older brother, Matt, was a Notre Dame men's lacrosse legend. So as long as the Kavanaugh family has someone at Notre Dame, odds are they're going to be a damn good player. So that was really cool to see them get another national championship together. And also want to give a huge shout-out to the men's lacrosse coach, Kevin Corrigan. I mean, what a story, what a journey that guy's had as the men's lacrosse coach at Notre Dame. He had to wait a long time to get his first ring, and now he has 2 in his 35th and 36th year as the head coach of the men's lacrosse team. There's actually a pretty funny moment in the post-game when he was talking to the reporter after the game, and he was giving him a hard time about the fact that Corrigan was unprepared for the Gatorade shower, and Corrigan was like, hey, I should have a lot more of those by now, so I wasn't really ready for it. And I thought that was great because he's right. I mean, the men's lacrosse program has been at the top of the sport for a really long time, and they just weren't able to get over the edge and win that national championship, and now they get 2 back-to-back. And full disclosure, I can't even consider myself a casual fan of lacrosse, but I did sort of follow the team and what they were doing all season long as they defended the title. I watched the semifinal game against Denver, and I watched the national championship this year. Both games are a lot of fun. This is a fun team to root for. They kick ass, they take names, and they have fun doing it. And I just think that what they did, coming off winning the national championship, a super emotional win, really hard-fought game over Duke, in order to have that sort of motivation to keep it going and defend that national championship is really tough to do. It's hard enough to win one. It's even harder to win a second one. And Notre Dame was able to do it, and they pretty much cruised through their entire season. They lost one game all season long. That was way back in February to Georgetown. They lost 11-10 at home, and then they won every single game the rest of the way, and they were dominant. They beat Virginia by 9 in the ACC tournament semifinals. Then they beat Duke by 10 in the conference championship game in a rematch of last year's title game. Then once the NCAA tournament came around, they actually got more dominant as each round passed. They beat Albany in the first round, 14-9. Then they avenged their loss to Georgetown in the quarterfinals with a 16-11 win. They dominated Denver in the second half of the semifinal game to win 13-6. They were actually down 5-6 at halftime. Then they scored 8 straight goals in the second half to cruise to a victory, and then they smoked Maryland by 10 in the national championship. They're basically like the UConn men's basketball team and men's lacrosse. They dominated their way to a second straight national championship. But whenever you thought, could they trip up here? Are they going to be as focused? Well, there was a brief moment in the Denver game where like, are they going to be able to pull this one off? And then they just put their foot on the gas and dominated the entire second half. And it was just really, really impressive what they were able to accomplish this season. And obviously, when you talk about the men's lacrosse team, there are some football ties as well. Jordan Faison, the Notre Dame wide receiver, also men's lacrosse player, scored a goal in this one to make it 11-4, a really nice play. He is so shifty, and you can kind of see his football skills translate to the lacrosse field. He's so elusive out there, and he has been making plays all season long. He finished his freshman lacrosse season with 22 goals and 8 assists. Also had 19 receptions for 322 yards and 4 touchdowns in football, despite not playing the first half of the season. And I know there were some scholarship numbers at play there, but now when you think back, especially the Duke game, and what Notre Dame was dealing with at wide receiver when they basically had like 3 healthy guys, and one of them was Tobias Merriweather, and if I remember correctly, he wasn't even that healthy. I think he was dealing with a hamstring injury and also just didn't really have the mental fortitude to make plays in that game. Faison absolutely should have been out there, and he wasn't, but then they brought him out there for the Louisville game, scored a touchdown in his first game playing there. So anyway, he's going to be a big player on the Notre Dame football team next season, and maybe, hey, Faison, you got your ring in the cross, maybe you're good. Maybe you just focus all your time on football, because I think he could be one hell of a football player. I'm kidding, kind of. I know he's not going to do that. And then there's Tyler Buchner. Congrats to him. And he might have the weirdest career arc of any student athlete to ever come through Notre Dame. If you just look at the past 18 months for Tyler Buchner, I saw this on a tweet, forgot the handle, so I'm sorry for not giving the proper credit, but I do want to just focus on Tyler Buchner here for a second, because in the past 18 months, Buchner won the Gator Bowl MVP as the starting quarterback for Notre Dame in a win over South Carolina. Then Buchner transferred to Alabama to be the quarterback there. He started one game there for the Alabama Crimson Tide with Nick Saban as his head coach, and he was on the team that made the college football playoff. Then he transferred back to Notre Dame, joined the lacrosse team after going 5 years without playing the sport at all, in one national championship. By the way, he appeared in 10 games, including the semifinal against Denver. So it's not like you just rode the bench all season long to a ring. He did get out there, and that's so impressive considering, like I said, he did not play the sport at all competitively for 5 years, and now he's on the national championship team and was a bit of a factor. Obviously, he has a lot of ground to make up before he becomes a regular contributor. But I'm just so happy for him, because there have been so many things that have just gone poorly for him. If you go back to 2022, that loss to Marshall, the season-ending injury, when it was his time to take over the program, it just seems like he's been, dealt with a really tough hand, and he is maintained a positive attitude. I'm sure it's been really tough for him behind closed doors, but the fact that he was able to come back to Notre Dame, join the team, and get this moment, I thought was really, really cool for him. Also, Sam Asaf deserves a shout-out. Walk-on running back who also plays lacrosse. I genuinely have no idea how Faison and Asaf do it. Being a student at Notre Dame is a challenge, let alone being a student athlete, so I can't even imagine what it's like being a two-sport athlete. So credit to those guys, credit to Tyler Buchner, credit to Kevin Corrigan, Kavanaugh brothers, the entire team, and light up Grace Hall, because the Irish are champions once again. All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish first listen of the day. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning with a breakdown of the defensive depth chart and my biggest question mark for each position group on that side of the ball as we head into the summer. In the meantime, please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you're listening to the podcast, and I'll see you all tomorrow.